The alarms blared through the sterile corridors of the cloning complex, a shrill symphony of urgency that reverberated off the metallic walls. Dr. Alara Boss sprinted past rows of gleaming incubators, her mind racing faster than her feet. Above her, a digital counter ticked ominously towards zero, each second heralding the supposed apocalypse that the Oracle had predicted. But Alara didn't have time for prophecies. She skidded to a halt in front of a central console, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. The complex was a marvel of human ingenuity, a labyrinthine network of labs and chambers designed to manufacture life as easily as breathing. Yet today, it was a beacon of defiance against cosmic doom. Alara, a voice crackled through her earpiece. It was Cade, her partner in this rebellion against fate. Section B is locked down. They're trying to stop us. Not if I can help it, Alara muttered, overriding the security protocols with a few deft keystrokes. The Oracle's followers could worship their impending end all they wanted, but she had clones to awaken and a world to save. The doors to Section B hissed open, releasing a rush of chilled air. Inside, rows of tanks lined the walls, each one housing a potential savior in embryonic form. Eons of evolution had been compressed into these glass wombs, engineered to withstand the very cataclysm that threatened to wipe humanity from existence. We need to get them online now. Cade's urgency matched the frenetic beat of Alara's heart. He appeared beside her, eyes scanning the room full of latent potential. Together, they moved with practiced precision, activating the birthing sequence for each clone. The tanks bubbled and whirred, life stirring within their confines as the countdown continued its relentless march. You really think this will work? Cade asked, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. Alara paused, a brief moment of doubt piercing through her resolve. I don't know, she admitted, but I'd rather fight for a chance than surrender to a prophecy. Suddenly, the floor shook, a tremor of discontent from the Earth's core. The Oracle's doomsday prediction said the planet would convulse, expelling humanity like a virus. But Alara refused to accept their extinction as inevitability. Come on, she shouted, pulling Cade along as they dashed to the next chamber. More barriers, more codes to break, but with each hurdle, they grew closer to birthing a new future. As they worked, a new sound joined the alarms, a deep, resonant hum that seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere. It was a sound that no machine in the complex could make. Alara's heart skipped a beat. Do you hear that? Cade asked, fear and awe mingling in his voice. I hear it, Alara replied, her gaze drawn to the ceiling where the hum seemed most intense. It's starting. The clones were awakening, and with them, the hope that humanity could rewrite its end. In that moment, with the world teetering on the brink of annihilation, Alara realized they weren't just fighting for survival. They were battling for the right to define their own destiny. The vastness of the starship's observation deck was a dramatic contrast to the chaos unfolding outside the transparent walls. Commander Alara Boss leaned against the cool, reinforced glass, her mind racing as she processed the storm of activity in the void before her. The alien armada had emerged from nothingness like a predator from the depths, their ships dark and angular, bristling with technology humanity had only glimpsed in their wildest dreams or nightmares. The initial contact had been abrupt, and the message clear. Humanity was to surrender or be eradicated. Boss, however, had other plans. With a determined set to her jaw, she turned to her crew, all eyes on her, waiting for orders that could very well determine the fate of their species. Boss, Lieutenant Jiro Takahashi called out, his voice steady despite the tension crackling in the air. We've got incoming data streams from the enemy ships. Looks like they're trying to hack into our systems. A quick nod from Boss set the room into motion. Divert all power to countermeasures. I want every encryption we have thrown at them. We can't let them into our systems. That's non-negotiable. The crew moved as one, a well-oiled machine honed by years of preparation for this exact scenario. They were rebels, outcasts from a fractured Earth, bound not by allegiance to a single government, but by a shared belief in humanity's right to exist on its own terms. Commander, Takahashi continued, I've got another feed coming in. Looks like a direct transmission from their flagship. Put it through, boss ordered, turning to face the holographic display that flickered to life in the center of the room. The image wavered, then solidified into the form of a tall, imposing alien with skin like polished stone, eyes like burning coals. I am Archon Zorath of the Zalyuth Dominion, the alien intoned, each word a measured threat. Your defiance is ill-advised. Surrender now, and your people will be spared. Boss crossed her arms, her gaze unflinching. And if we refuse, Zorath's expression, if it could be called that, was unreadable. We shall erase your existence from the universe. Not much of a negotiator, are you? Boss shot back. We're not going anywhere. Humanity doesn't roll over for anyone. Zorath's eyes flared briefly, a hint of amusement or perhaps annoyance. You are insignificant, a lesser species. We offer you mercy, yet you choose destruction. Boss's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach her eyes. If you thought we were insignificant, you wouldn't be here. It's you who should reconsider. With a wave of his hand, the transmission cut off, leaving the room in a charged silence. Boss turned back to her crew, her mind already spinning with possibilities. Takahashi, what's the status on the experimental weapons? Not fully calibrated, but operational enough, he replied, his fingers dancing over the console. We might not have the firepower to take them all out, but we can hurt them. Sometimes a well-placed jab is all you need, Boss said, her mind flashing back to her years in the underground resistance, where every advantage was exploited, no matter how small. Prepare to engage. We need to buy Earth time to organize a counterattack. The ship's engines rumbled to life beneath her feet, the sensation of familiar comfort. Boss glanced at her crew, their faces set with determination. They were all here by choice, knowing full well the risks. That was the power of humanity, the will to fight, even against impossible odds. As the ship surged forward, Boss's thoughts turned to the planet below, to the billions of lives hanging in the balance. She remembered her childhood under the iron grip of Earth's fractured governments, the endless wars that had divided humanity. Yet here, in the darkness between stars, they had found unity in rebellion. Commander, Takahashi called out, we've got incoming fighters. Looks like they're trying to cut us off. Boss's mind raced, analyzing the tactical display. The Zalyuth ships were smaller, faster, but their patterns were predictable. Open fire. Target their engines. We need to keep them off balance. The ship shuddered as the weapons array unleashed a torrent of energy, streaks of light carving through the void. One of the alien fighters exploded in a brilliant flash, debris scattering like shooting stars. Good hit. Someone shouted, the tension in the room breaking for a moment. Don't get cocky, Boss warned, even as a part of her reveled in the small victory. We've only just started. Outside, the space battle unfolded with a deadly elegance, ships weaving and darting as they exchanged fire. Boss's eyes flicked over the tactical readouts, noting patterns, searching for weaknesses. Takahashi, patch me into engineering, she ordered, her voice cutting through the din. The screen blinked, replaced with the image of Chief Engineer Lena Torres, her face streaked with sweat and grime. Torres, I need more power to the weapons. Can you reroute auxiliary systems? Torres nodded, already moving to comply. I'll have to take it from life support reserves, but it should give you what you need. Do it. We'll worry about breathing later, Boss said, knowing full well the risks. Every decision carried weight, a precarious balance of survival and sacrifice. The ship surged with renewed energy, the weapons firing with increased intensity. More alien fighters succumbed to the onslaught, but the Zalyuth responded with equal ferocity. Boss felt the ship shudder under the impact of enemy fire, alarms blaring as systems strained under the pressure. Commander, shields are down to 20%, Takahashi reported, his voice tight with urgency. Keep us moving, Boss ordered, refusing to let fear creep in. They were in too deep now, committed to this course. We need to take out that cruiser if we're going to punch through. The Zalyath cruiser loomed ahead, a menacing silhouette against the backdrop of distant stars. Its weapons blazed, each shot a challenge, a reminder of what was at stake. "Torres, how's that power coming?" Boss asked, the strain evident in her voice. "Almost there," Torres replied, the sounds of frantic activity echoing in the background. "I'm rerouting the last conduits now." Boss nodded, her gaze fixed on the looming threat. The cruiser was their key to disrupting the enemy formation, to breaking the blockade that threatened Earth. "Takahashi, prepare to fire all remaining torpedoes on my mark," she commanded, her mind focused, calculating trajectories and probabilities in a heartbeat. "Aye, Commander," Takahashi responded, his fingers poised over the controls. Time seemed to stretch as they closed the distance, the cruiser's silhouette growing larger, more menacing. Boss's heart pounded in her chest, each second a lifetime. "Torres, now," she barked, and the ship surged with power, a final burst of energy as the weapons lit up the void. "Mark," Boss shouted, and the torpedoes streaked towards the cruiser, guided by the desperate hope of a people united in defiance. The explosion was blinding, a supernova of light and energy that consumed the cruiser, its death throes sending shockwaves through the battlefield. Cheers erupted from the crew, a brief moment of triumph amidst the chaos. "Punch through the gap," Boss ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "We're not out of this yet." The ship veered away from the wreckage, engines straining as they pushed towards the breach in the enemy lines. Boss could feel the weight of each decision, each sacrifice, a burden she bore willingly for the sake of Earth. But the Zalyath were relentless. More ships moved to intercept, their tactics shifting, adapting. Boss could see their intelligence, their cunning, mirrored in the movements of their fleet. "Takahashi, status report," she demanded, her mind racing to formulate a new plan. "Shields are critical, weapon systems at 30%. We can't take another hit like that," Takahashi reported, his voice tinged with frustration. Boss nodded, aware of the odds. They were running out of options, out of time. But surrender was not in her nature, nor in the nature of humanity. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers," she ordered, her gaze sweeping over the tactical display. "We need to regroup, find another angle." As the ship danced through the void, Boss felt a grim determination settle over her. They were not beaten, not yet. Humanity's spirit was not so easily crushed. But as the Zalyath fleet closed in, the reality of their situation became painfully clear. They were outgunned, outnumbered, facing an enemy with technology far beyond their own. Yet even in the face of overwhelming odds, Boss felt a fierce pride in her crew, in the resilience of humanity. They would fight, not for glory, but for the right to exist, to carve their own path among the stars. "Takahashi," Boss called, her voice steady, "prepare for a tactical retreat. We need to regroup and reassess." "Aye, Commander," Takahashi replied, understanding the gravity of the decision. Boss knew it was a gamble, but it was their only chance. To fight another day, to find a way to turn the tide against the Zalyath. As the ship veered away from the battle, Boss felt a pang of frustration, of anger at the injustice of it all. But she pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. They would find a way, they had to, because humanity's story was not one of surrender, but of relentless defiance, of a spirit that refused to be broken. And in the depths of space, that spirit burned brighter than any star. The Jagari envoy, Viren, with his obsidian black eyes and scales shimmering like oil slicks under starlight, towered over the humans gathered in the barren conference room of the United Earth Coalition ship, Vanguard Horizon. His presence was a reminder of their precarious position, stuck in a treaty negotiation as fragile as a glass sculpture in a hurricane. The room was silent, the air thick with unspoken tensions and the scent of recycled air. The Jagari envoy's voice cut through the tension, each word a blade. "You must understand, humans, the prophecy is not simply an ominous warning. It is a certainty, recorded in the annals of the galaxies. Your resistance is not only futile, it is an affront to the natural order. Captain Alara Boss glanced at her officers, her gaze lingering on Lieutenant Mikey Tanaka, whose youthful defiance simmered just beneath his composed exterior. Viren, she began, her voice steady, we are not here to accept our demise as foretold by your prophecy. We are here to find a way to coexist, to defy expectations and perhaps alter this so-called natural order. Viren's lips curled into what might have been a smile, or perhaps a snarl. Humans have always been a peculiar anomaly. Your capacity for hope is unprecedented. But tell me, Captain, how do you plan to alter a prophecy that has stood longer than your species has been capable of coherent thought? Mikey couldn't hold back any longer, his voice rising with each word. It's because we've always done the impossible. We crossed oceans, reached into space, survived against odds that should have broken us. Maybe you should be asking us how we plan to defy your prophecy, not if it can be done. A murmur of agreement rippled through the human ranks, a small but vital spark of rebellion. Alara nodded subtly, acknowledging Mikey's outburst without reprimanding him. Viren's gaze flickered over the humans, his unreadable expression betraying nothing. Very well, Viren said, his voice carrying a hint of amusement. Proceed with your attempts, but know this. The coalition of the Jagari is vast, our reach beyond your imagination. Every step you take will be met with resistance. As Viren left the room, a palpable tension settled over the crew. Alara turned to her team, her confidence a shield against the mounting pressures. All right, let's regroup. We need options, and we need them fast. Chief Engineer Anika Rao, a woman as brilliant as she was stubborn, was the first to speak. We can't match their firepower head-on. They outnumber us, outgun us, and their technology is way beyond ours. But maybe we can outthink them. Mikey nodded, his mind whirring with possibilities. We've got ingenuity on our side. What if we turn our weaknesses into unpredictability? Hit them with strategies they've never seen before. Alara considered this, her mind a storm of conflicting thoughts. We'll need every edge we can get. Anika, can you start working on a way to disrupt their communications? Something they won't see coming? Already on it, Captain, Anika replied, her fingers tapping a rapid beat on her datapad. Meanwhile, in another corner of the ship, Dr. Alia Hassan was busy tending to the wounded from their last skirmish. Her movements were efficient, but beneath the surface, a tide of frustration boiled. Each injured crew member reminded her of their vulnerability, of how outmatched they truly were. Her assistant, a young medic named Jules, watched her with wide, worried eyes. Doc, do you really think we can win this? Jules asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Alia paused, her hands stilling momentarily. I don't know, Jules. But I do know that as long as there's life, there's hope. And we have to keep fighting for that hope, no matter how slim it seems. Back in the strategy room, Alara and her senior staff pored over holographic maps and data streams. Mikey's enthusiasm was infectious, a beacon for the weary crew. What about psychological warfare? They might be advanced, but they're still sentient. They can feel fear, doubt. Alara's eyes lit up with a glimmer of approval. Yes, and if we can exploit that, we can gain valuable time to regroup and strategize. Anika, how's that communications disruption coming? Anika looked up, her expression one of fierce determination. Almost there. Give me a few more hours, and we might just have something that'll throw them off balance. Just as hope began to blossom anew, an alert blared through the ship, the red lights casting an ominous glow. Incoming transmission. The comms officer reported, urgency lacing her voice. The screen flickered to life, revealing a familiar yet unwelcome face. Eric, a defector from the human ranks who had sided with the Jagari for reasons known only to him, his eyes cold and calculating. Greetings, Captain Voss. I see you're still clinging to your misguided cause, he taunted, his voice a venomous whisper. Alara's jaw tightened, her eyes narrowing. What do you want, Eric? To offer you a chance to save what's left of your people. Surrender now, and perhaps the Jagari will show mercy. Mikey's fists clenched at his sides. You'd betray your own kind, Eric? For what? Eric's laughter was hollow, devoid of warmth. For survival, Lieutenant. Something you'll soon find in short supply. As the transmission ended, Alara turned to her crew, her resolve hardening. We're not giving up. Not now, not ever. We have to show them what humanity is truly capable of. The crew returned to their tasks with renewed vigor, even as the weight of their situation pressed down on them like a leaden shroud. Each of them knew they were on borrowed time, but it was a currency they intended to spend wisely. Hours turned into days, the Vanguard horizon a hive of activity as they prepared for the inevitable confrontation. Annika's efforts bore fruit, the communications disruption ready to deploy at a moment's notice. Mikey and the tactical team devised strategies that would exploit every weakness, every chink in the Jagari's formidable armor. Yet, as the moment of reckoning drew near, doubt crept in like a thief in the night. Alara stood alone on the observation deck, the vastness of space spreading out before her like an ink-black ocean. Every star was a reminder of the enormity of their task, of the near impossibility of defying a prophecy that had lingered for eons. Mikey found her there, the silence pressing down on both of them. "Captain," he said softly, "we're ready. As ready as we'll ever be." Alara turned to him, her eyes searching his face as if seeking reassurance. "Do you believe we can do this, Mikey?" He hesitated, honesty warring with hope. "I believe we have to try. We owe it to everyone who came before us, and to everyone who will come after." She nodded, a small smile breaking through her grim facade. "Thank you, Mikey. Your faith, it's infectious." He grinned, the mischievous spark in his eyes a balm to her weary soul. "It's what I do best, Captain." As the ship prepared to engage the Jagari fleet, Alara addressed her crew one last time, her voice carrying through the intercom with a clarity that belied the storm within her. "We stand on the brink of history, facing an enemy that believes us doomed. But humanity has never been defined by what others believe. We define ourselves by our actions, by our courage, by our refusal to surrender. Today, we fight not just for survival, but for the right to forge our own destiny." The battle that followed was a symphony of chaos, the Vanguard Horizon's crew a force of nature, driven by desperation and resolve. The Jagari ships swarmed like shadows, their technology a testament to their superiority. But for every advantage they held, the humans countered with unpredictability and tenacity. Annika's disruption worked wonders, sowing confusion among the Jagari as their communications faltered. Mikey's strategies, though risky, yielded moments of triumph against the odds. Yet, the tide of battle was relentless, hope and despair entwined in a dance as old as time. As the Vanguard Horizon's shields buckled under the Jagari onslaught, Alara found herself at the helm, her heart a drumbeat in her ears. The prophecy loomed over her like a specter, but within her burned a defiance that refused to be extinguished. "Captain," Mikey's voice crackled through the comm, urgency sharpening it like a blade. "We've got a breach in the lower decks, and they're boarding." The realization hit her like a blow, a stark reminder of their vulnerability. But with that realization came resolve. All hands, prepare to repel boarders. As the crew mobilized to defend their ship, Alara knew the battle was far from over. They were outmatched, outnumbered, but not outwitted. As long as they drew breath, the fight would continue. In the heart of chaos, human potential flickered like a flame, its full strength yet to be revealed. The prophecy might loom large, but it had never faced the indomitable spirit of humanity, a force as unpredictable as it was unstoppable. And so they fought, driven by the belief that even the stars could be rewritten if one dared to defy the darkness. But things weren't going to plan. The initial diplomatic exchange had gone off without a hitch. We had run through the protocols, the handshakes, the awkward silences that punctuated the first meeting. The Zalketh stood there in their opalescent armor, their pale skin shimmering under the artificial lights of the Starbound Alliance Council chamber. Ambassador Lyraean, their appointed spokesperson, communicated through clicks and hisses, translated into our language by a device that buzzed annoyingly in our ears. Despite the alien technology, their words were crystal clear. We seek alliance. We seek cooperation. The room had buzzed with optimism. Humanity, long left to its own devices after the Great Silence, was ready to step out onto the galactic stage. We had thought ourselves ready for anything, but that was before the Zalkath revealed their true intentions. The second meeting was supposed to be a formality, a follow-up discussion to solidify the terms of our burgeoning alliance. We had even prepared a small celebratory banquet with what we hoped were palatable Earth delicacies. But when the Zalkath delegation arrived, they brought with them an armada that quickly encircled Earth's orbit, casting long shadows that darkened our skies and our hopes. Ambassador Lyraean was unapologetic. We seek alliance, but you must understand, for the galaxy's safety, we must ensure compliance. Their message was clear. Submit or be subjugated. Panic rippled through the council chamber. Communications were jammed, and our defenses were rendered impotent by technology centuries beyond ours. We had been naive, blinded by the promise of interstellar camaraderie, and now we stood at the precipice of subjugation. General Reed, the military liaison on the diplomatic team, stood silently, fists clenched at his sides. His grimace told the story of a man who had seen too many battles and was not eager to lose one on home turf. We won't give in, he muttered under his breath, just loud enough for those of us nearby to hear. But resistance seemed futile. Reports started flooding in. The Zalkath had activated their blockade, and global economies were grinding to a halt. Energy shortages loomed as they commandeered satellite networks. The internet flickered and stuttered. Yet, amidst the chaos, the human spirit, ever defiant, began to stir. Huey. A voice pulled me from my thoughts. It was Dr. Lena Carter, our chief scientist, hustling towards me with a wild look in her eyes. I need you to come with me, now. We raced out of the chamber's side door, leaving behind the clamor of frantic negotiations and into the bowels of the complex where the true work could be done away from prying eyes. Lena's makeshift lab was a chaos of screens, wires, and holographic displays. The Zalkath may have us boxed in, but they underestimate what a cornered species can do, she said, gesturing at the blueprints scattered across the tables. What is this? I asked, scanning the array of tech I barely understood. A way out, she replied cryptically. We've been working on a quantum entanglement communication system. If we can get it operational, we can break through their blockade and reach out to our colonies, the lunar bases, and maybe even beyond. Her plan was bold, but the challenge was immense. The Zalkath had jammed our conventional systems. Lena's solution was to leapfrog centuries of technological progression in weeks. Our chances were slim, but slim was better than none. As we dived into the work, the pressure from above only increased. The Zalkath began landing probes on the surface, their scouts probing our defenses and gathering data on our capabilities. Each probe was a reminder of our vulnerability, but also a source of newfound resolve. The world outside was changing rapidly. Resources were being rationed, and the populace, unaware of our efforts, were getting restless. Protests erupted, demanding answers, demanding action. The facade of normalcy was crumbling, and with it, the patience of the world's governments. Back in the lab, Lena and I faced setback after setback. The equipment was outdated, the power supply unreliable. At one point, a critical component fried, leaving us scrambling for replacements. As if that wasn't enough, word came that the Zalkath had begun constructing a massive structure in Earth's orbit, its purpose ominously unclear. Morale was flagging, but we pressed on. Our small team grew closer, united by a shared goal and the mounting pressure. Even as the world around us seemed to shrink under the Zalkath's gaze, our resolve only grew. It was during one of these marathon sessions that Lena, eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, slammed her fist into the table. Damn it, Huey, we can't do this alone. She was right. The problem was bigger than us, bigger than any single nation or agency. We needed help, and we needed it fast. Do you remember that old comms array they decommissioned up near the Arctic? I asked, a plan forming in my mind. If we can get up there, we might be able to piggyback on its infrastructure. It's analog, completely off the grid, something the Zalketh might overlook. Lena's eyes lit up with the flicker of hope. It's a long shot, but it's something. That night, under the cover of darkness, we slipped away from the complex. General Reed had provided us with a small team, the best he could spare, to help us reach the array. It was a ragtag group, each member driven by the same stubbornness that defined humanity itself. The journey north was fraught with danger. Zalketh drones patrolled the skies, and checkpoints had been erected along major routes. We moved with caution, sometimes traveling by foot through rugged terrain to avoid detection. Each day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to adapt. As we drew closer to the Arctic, the temperature plummeted, and the landscape turned harsh and unforgiving. The world seemed to shrink around us, the vastness of the wilderness pressing in from all sides. Yet, in that stark isolation, we found a measure of freedom from our pursuers. The comms array was exactly as I remembered, rusting, neglected, a relic of a bygone era. But it was also a beacon of hope. As we worked to bring it back online, the team bonded over shared stories and the desperate drive to succeed. The array's systems sputtered and sparked to life, an old giant waking from its slumber. Inside the control room, Lena and I worked side by side, surrounded by the crackle of static and the hum of ancient machinery. The air was thick with tension, a quiet desperation that fueled our frantic efforts. "We're running out of time," Lena said, glancing at the countdown ticking away on her screen. "If we don't get this working soon, it won't matter." The Zalketh were closing in. Their probes had detected energy spikes from the array, and soon, they'd come to investigate. We had to act fast. Finally, with a few last-minute improvisations and a silent prayer to whatever gods might be listening, the quantum entanglement system glowed to life. The first coherent signal broke through the static, a lifeline cast into the darkness. "This is Dr. Lena Carter, broadcasting from Earth. We need assistance. The Zalketh have us under siege. If anyone is out there, please respond." The silence that followed was deafening, stretching into eternity as we waited, hearts pounding, breath caught in our throats. Every second felt like an eternity, the weight of the world pressing down upon us. And then, against all odds, a voice crackled through the static, a human voice, distant but unmistakable. "This is Lunar Base Echo. We hear you. What do you need?" Relief washed over us, a tidal wave of emotion that threatened to overwhelm. But there was no time to celebrate. The Zalketh were closing in, and soon, they would discover our location. "Prepare for evac," Lena said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "We need to get out of here." But before we could move, the ground shook with the impact of a Zalketh probe landing nearby. The structure groaned under the strain, debris falling from the ceiling as alarms blared to life. "Go," I shouted to the team, adrenaline surging through me. "Get to the transport." We raced through the corridors, the pounding of our feet echoing in the confined space. Behind us, the Zalketh forces were descending, their ominous shadows stretching across the landscape. As we reached the transport, Lena stopped, turning back to face the array. "We can't leave it," she said, determination in her eyes. "If they find it, they'll destroy everything." I knew what she meant. The array was a symbol of hope, a fragile bridge to the outside world. If it fell, so too would our chances of survival. "We'll buy you some time," I said, squeezing her hand. "Just come back to us." With a nod, she turned and sprinted back inside, disappearing into the shadows. The rest of us boarded the transport, the engines roaring to life as we took off, leaving the array and our hopes in Lena's capable hands. The Zalketh were relentless, their ships pursuing us as we maneuvered through the icy expanse. Explosions rocked the transport, systems failing one by one as we fought to stay airborne. "Hold on," the pilot shouted, veering sharply to avoid another blast. The world spun around us, a chaotic blur of motion and sound. In those moments, facing the abyss, we clung to the only thing that mattered, each other. Humanity's greatest strength, its ability to endure against all odds, surged within us. Yet, even as we fought, the Zalkath pressed their advantage. Their ships closed in, their weapons primed and ready to strike. We were outnumbered, outgunned, and on the brink of destruction. As the final blow landed, the transport shuddered, systems failing catastrophically. We were caught in a downward spiral, plummeting towards the icy ground below. In our darkest moment, with the world collapsing around us, I caught a glimpse of what made us special. It wasn't our technology or our intellect, it was our spirit, unyielding and defiant, even in the face of oblivion. As we braced for impact, I held on to that thought, a flicker of hope amidst the encroaching darkness. Across the charred, cratered landscape of what was once the thriving city of New York, the air shimmered with an acrid haze. The towering skyscrapers, symbols of progress and prosperity, had been reduced to skeletal remains, their steel spines jutting into a bruised, alien sky. Humanity's first contact with the Kosoth, an advanced interstellar species, had not been the utopian exchange of knowledge and culture that many had hoped for. Instead, it had unleashed a cataclysmic struggle for survival that threatened to extinguish the very essence of humanity. A handful of survivors huddled in the remnants of a subway station, the air thick with the scent of sweat and fear. Among them was Captain Sarah Kinsey, a grizzled veteran of the Global Defense Force, who had become an unyielding symbol of human resilience against the cosmic onslaught. Her once pristine uniform was now a patchwork of soot and bloodstains, her eyes hollowed by the horrors she had witnessed. "Report," she rasped, her voice a fragile whisper in the gloom. Lieutenant Mark Chen, her second in command, hunched over a makeshift tactical map illuminated by the feeble glow of a scavenged flashlight. "Kosoth forces have secured the central boroughs," he said, tracing a finger across a map riddled with red X's denoting areas of heavy engagement. "Our troops are being pushed back on all fronts. Supplies are running low, and communications are spotty at best." Sarah absorbed the grim news in silence, her mind racing to conjure some semblance of a plan. The Kosoth had underestimated humanity's tenacity in the early days of the invasion, and she intended to make them pay dearly for every inch of ground they gained. But the odds were stacked impossibly against them, and even she felt the chill hand of doubt creeping into her heart. "Gather everyone," she ordered, a newfound resolve hardening her tone. "We need to remind them why we're still in this fight." As the ragtag band of soldiers and civilians assembled, their faces etched with fatigue and despair, Sarah stepped forward. "Listen up," she began, her voice carrying the weight of countless battles. "The Kosoth think they have us on the ropes. They see us as insects to be crushed underfoot. But let me remind you of something. They're wrong." Her gaze swept across the crowd, locking eyes with each person in turn. "We are human," she continued, her words imbued with a fierce, indomitable spirit. "We've faced extinction before, and every time we came back stronger. We're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting for our right to exist, for the legacy of those who came before us, and for the future of those who will follow." A murmur of agreement rippled through the group, a flicker of hope kindling in their eyes. Mark Chen stepped forward, an idea blossoming in his mind. "Captain, there might be a way to turn the tide," he suggested, his voice tinged with cautious optimism. "The Kosoth rely on their orbital satellites for coordination and communication. If we can take out a few of those, it might disrupt their operations long enough for us to regroup." Sarah nodded, her mind already racing through the possibilities. "Do it," she commanded, the spark of rebellion reigniting her spirit. "We may not have the firepower they do, but we have ingenuity, and that's something they'll never understand." The next hours were a blur of frenetic activity as the survivors set to work, scavenging parts and rigging makeshift launch systems from the detritus of the city. The plan was audacious, bordering on suicidal, but desperation had a way of sharpening the mind and steeling the will. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Painting the sky in shades of crimson, the team gathered on a rooftop, their makeshift rocket poised for launch. Sarah felt a twinge of apprehension as she surveyed the horizon, the alien warships hovering menacingly in the distance. "Ready?" she asked, her voice a low rumble of determination. "Ready," came the chorus of replies. With a deep breath, Sarah gave the signal. The rocket roared to life, a plume of fire and smoke propelling it skyward. A tense silence fell over the group as they watched its trajectory, their hopes pinned to this fragile vessel hurtling towards the heavens. The Kosath, in their hubris, had not anticipated such an audacious move. Their overconfidence was their Achilles' heel, and as the rocket struck its target, a brilliant flash lit up the night sky, the shockwave reverberating through the city. Cheers erupted from the rooftop, a spontaneous eruption of joy and relief. It was a small victory, a fleeting respite in the midst of chaos, but it was enough to reignite the fire of defiance that burned within each of them. "We did it," Mark breathed, a grin breaking through the grime on his face. Sarah allowed herself a rare smile, but the weight of their predicament was never far from her mind. "This is just the beginning," she reminded them, her voice tempered with resolve. "We may have bought ourselves some time, but the fight is far from over." As the group dispersed, their spirits buoyed by the unexpected triumph, Sarah lingered on the rooftop, her gaze fixed on the horizon. Somewhere out there, she knew, the Kosath were regrouping, their cold, calculating minds already plotting their next move. But she also knew that they had underestimated humanity's capacity for adaptation and innovation. They had failed to grasp the unyielding spirit that drove them to persevere against all odds. It was a lesson that she intended to teach them, one battle at a time. Down below, in the depths of the subway station, the survivors banded together, pooling their knowledge and resources to forge new strategies. Engineers and scientists who had once worked in the comfort of laboratories now labored tirelessly, improvising weapons and defenses from whatever scraps they could find. The Kosath, believing the humans broken, began to relax their vigilance, their patrols becoming less frequent and more complacent. It was a mistake they would come to regret, for every setback, every defeat, only served to harden the resolve of their adversaries, fueling a rebellion that simmered beneath the surface. As days turned into weeks, Sarah and her team launched a series of hit-and-run attacks, striking at supply depots and communication hubs with ruthless efficiency. Each raid was a testament to human ingenuity and courage, a thorn in the side of their oppressors that refused to be plucked. The Kosath, unaccustomed to such tenacity, found themselves on the defensive, their strategies unraveling in the face of an enemy that refused to play by the rules. Panic began to seep into their ranks, their confidence eroding with each new setback. For Sarah, the turning point came on a moonlit night when her team infiltrated a Kosath command center deep within the city. The mission was fraught with danger, the odds of success slim, but necessity had a way of sharpening their senses. As they crept through the shadows, their hearts pounding in sync with the rhythmic thrum of alien machinery, Sarah felt a thrill of anticipation. This was what it meant to be human, to defy the impossible, to challenge the inevitable, to rise from the ashes stronger than before. The command center was a hive of activity, the Kosath technicians oblivious to the threat lurking in their midst. With a coordinated strike, Sarah's team disabled the security systems, plunging the facility into chaos. In the ensuing pandemonium, they uploaded a virus into the Kosath network, a digital contagion designed to sow confusion and disrupt their communications. It was a desperate gambit, but desperation was the wellspring of innovation, and they had nothing to lose. As the virus spread through the Kosath systems, the invaders were thrown into disarray, their carefully orchestrated operations unraveling before their eyes. It was a blow from which they would not easily recover, a testament to the power of human ingenuity and defiance. In the aftermath of the raid, as they slipped back into the shadows, Sarah felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks. The Kosath had been dealt a crippling blow, their overconfidence shattered by the audacity of a species they had deemed inferior. The tides of battle were shifting, and with each passing day, the seeds of rebellion took root, spreading like wildfire among the survivors. They had tasted victory, and they would not be denied their freedom. As dawn broke over the ruins of New York, painting the city in hues of gold and silver, Sarah stood at the precipice of a new era. The darkest hour had come and gone, and in its wake, a new resolve had emerged, stronger, fiercer, and more determined than ever. The road ahead was fraught with danger, but she welcomed the challenge. For she knew that as long as there was breath in her body, and fire in her heart, humanity would endure. They would rise from the ashes, defiant and unbroken, ready to reclaim their place among the stars. And so, with renewed determination, Sarah and her band of rebels prepared for the battles yet to come, their spirits buoyed by the knowledge that the human spirit could not be extinguished. The Kosoth had opened a Pandora's box, unleashing the indomitable force of human resilience. They had thought to conquer a world, but instead, they had ignited a rebellion that would echo across the cosmos, a clarion call to all who dared to dream of freedom. This was their darkest hour, but it was also their finest. A testament to the power of hope, the strength of unity, and the unyielding spirit of a species that refused to bow to the yoke of oppression. The fight was far from over, but the seeds of resurgence had been sown, and the time for reckoning was at hand. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. They would rise, defiant and unbroken, to reclaim their destiny among the stars. The Galactic Assembly on Ursa Prime had become a theater of whispered mockery and veiled contempt ever since humanity's debut among the stars. The Targans, a particularly condescending species with skin like polished obsidian and an insatiable thirst for dominance, were the loudest critics. Their leader, Vrax, had always believed the humans to be an inferior species, little more than a cosmic fluke. The Targans were not alone in this belief. The Zelnaga, the ruling elite of the Assembly, dismissed humanity's ability to contribute anything of value to the interstellar community. They saw Earth as a backwater planet, occasionally glancing at its inhabitants through the lenses of their advanced telescopes, bemused by the human's primitive nature. And yet, Earth had something the others didn't, the indomitable spirit of defiance. It was this spirit that throbbed in the heart of every human, and it was about to redefine the galaxy's understanding of power. The initial exchanges between Earth and the Assembly had been tentative, a dance of diplomacy that quickly devolved into a series of demands. Your planet's resources are to be shared, Vrax had declared in one of the meetings, his voice dripping with hubris. You are fortunate we even consider you worthy of existence. Earth's representative, a woman named Captain Elena Torres, stood silently, her expression giving nothing away. The meeting hall, a colossal dome of crystalline architecture, amplified every word, every breath. She was flanked by a team of scientists and strategists, their faces equally stoic. Fortunate indeed, she replied, her voice steady, unwavering. But Earth is not without its own gifts. Vrax laughed, a guttural sound that echoed like a distant storm. We have seen your technology, Captain Torres. Your ships are relics, your weapons laughable. What gifts could you possibly offer? Elena's lips curved into a slight smile, one that did not reach her eyes. Resilience, she said simply. The word hung in the air, lingering like an uninvited guest. The Assembly, so accustomed to the smooth flow of their own rhetoric, found themselves momentarily stalled. It was an answer they had not anticipated, and it was the first crack in their perception of humanity. The Targans, among others, had begun to encroach upon Earth's solar system, their ships blotting out the stars as they moved with predatory grace. The Assembly had warned humanity against resisting, advising them to accept their place in the cosmos. But resistance was not just a choice for humans, it was an inherent trait. And so, when the Targan fleet arrived within striking distance of Earth's orbital defenses, they found not a frightened planet, but a fortified one. The Targans had expected to see clunky, outdated satellites and rudimentary laser cannons. Instead, they were met with a web of defenses that glinted in the darkness, a testament to Earth's ingenuity. The satellites were equipped with a new technology, something the Targans had never seen, a form of adaptive shielding that absorbed and redirected energy. The first barrage of Targan firepower was met with an unexpected spectacle. Beams of deadly energy, intended to obliterate, instead danced across the sky, refracted and scattered into harmless shafts of light. The humans had transformed their defenses into a canvas for the cosmos, painting the night with hues of defiance. In the heart of Earth's command center, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Elena watched the display on a massive screen. Her team had worked tirelessly, poring over every plan, every contingency. They knew they were outnumbered, outgunned, but they also knew they were not outmatched in spirit or intellect. "Status?" Elena asked, her voice slicing through the room's tense atmosphere. A young officer, Lieutenant Carter, looked up from his console. "Shields holding, Captain. They're not breaking through." "Good. Now let's give them a taste of our own firepower." The humans had developed a new form of railgun technology, one that harnessed the very forces of their planetary magnetic field. It was a weapon of precision and power, one that could strike with the force of a supernova. As the order was given, Earth's defense grid responded with a symphony of thunder. Projectiles shot into the void, leaving trails of ionized light as they traveled at near light speed towards the Targan fleet. The Targans, so assured of their dominance, found themselves scrambling. Their shields, though formidable, were not impervious. The human railguns punched through, sending Targan ships spiraling into chaos. Vrax, aboard the command ship, watched in disbelief as his fleet faltered. This was not the narrative he had envisioned. These were not the humans he had mocked. He had underestimated them, and now he was witnessing the cost of that arrogance. Back on Earth, the news of the defense spread like wildfire. Humanity had taken its first stand, and it was a resounding success. Across the planet, people watched with bated breath, their fears tempered by a growing sense of unity and determination. In the following days, humanity's resolve only grew stronger. The Assembly sent emissaries, veiled threats wrapped in diplomatic language, but with each exchange, the humans revealed yet another facet of their collective strength. Engineers and scientists worked around the clock, refining their technologies and strategies. They harnessed the power of their planet's natural resources in ways the Assembly had never conceived. They utilized geothermal energy, turning the Earth's core into a battery of unimaginable capacity. They tapped into solar flares, channeling the sun's wrath as a weapon. But it wasn't just technology that defined humanity's rise. It was their spirit, that indefinable essence that pushed them to adapt, to survive, to thrive against all odds. The Assembly began to fracture, debates erupting over how to handle the human challenge. The Zelnaga, once dismissive, now called for caution. They saw in humanity a reflection of their own past struggles, a reminder of the tenacity that had brought them to power. Vrax, however, was not swayed. His pride demanded retribution, a reminder to the galaxy of Targan supremacy. He rallied his forces, preparing for a full-scale invasion, determined to crush Earth once and for all. Yet, as he mobilized his armada, whispers spread through the ranks. Rumors of human victories, of their ingenuity, of their unbreakable spirit. It was a contagion of doubt, one that no amount of bluster could erase. The time for the climactic confrontation was drawing near, and Earth was ready. Humanity had revealed its true nature, not a species to be subjugated, but one to be reckoned with. Their strength lay not just in their technology or their numbers, but in their unity, their refusal to bow. As the Targan fleet approached for what they believed would be the final assault, they were met with a sight they had not anticipated. Earth's skies were filled with ships, not just military vessels, but civilian ones, piloted by those who refused to stand idle while their planet was threatened. It was a display of solidarity that transcended borders and cultures, uniting humanity with a singular purpose. They had transformed their very essence into a weapon, one that resonated throughout the cosmos with a message clear and undeniable. Earth would not fall. In the command ship, Vrax felt the weight of his misjudgment. The humans had revealed themselves as more than he had ever imagined. They had taught him the true meaning of strength, of courage, of the will to fight for one's home. As the battle commenced, the outcome was no longer certain. The tides had shifted, and humanity stood at the precipice of a new era, their place among the stars no longer in question. The galaxy watched as the humans rose, their defiance a beacon of hope, of resilience. And in that moment, it became clear that humanity was not to be underestimated, that their story was only just beginning. The stars themselves seemed to whisper the truth that echoed in every human heart. They were here to stay. The star-speckled void unfurled its vastness before the bridge of the UNS Dauntless, the flagship of humanity's nascent interstellar fleet. Commander Alara Voss, resolute and unyielding, stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the holographic display that projected the enemy armada, an overwhelming swarm of sleek, ominous crafts belonging to the Zalaxians. These alien overlords, with their cold, calculating intellect and belief in their own invincibility, had deemed humanity little more than an inconvenience, a species to subjugate and exploit. But they had underestimated the indomitable spirit of Terrans. The Zalaxian fleet glided into formation, their craft surfaces shimmering like black obsidian under the distant starlight, each one bristling with advanced weaponry. They had come to finish what they had started, to extinguish the spark of human resistance that had dared to flare into defiance. Alara glanced at her crew, engineers, scientists, soldiers, and pilots, all united under the banner of Earth. Each of them bore the same fire in their eyes, a fierce determination that defied the cold vacuum surrounding them. She activated the intercom, her voice steady and strong. "This is it, team. They think we're weak, but they don't know us. They don't know what we fight for, our homes, our families, our freedom. And today, we show them who humanity really is." The crew erupted in a chorus of cheers, a symphony of defiance that reverberated through the hull of the Dauntless. They were ready. The Zalaxian commander, a figure draped in flowing robes of shimmering dark blue, observed the human fleet from his command throne with a look of disdain. The humans' technology was primitive, their tactics rudimentary. A swift strike would crush them, and the galaxy would know the price of rebellion. With a flick of his elongated fingers, he signaled the assault. The armada surged forward, a tidal wave of destruction. But humanity was ready. "Engage the Artemis Protocol," Alara ordered. A gleam of determination flashed in her eyes. It was humanity's ace in the hole, a technological marvel born from the crucible of desperation and genius. Across the human fleet, ships powered up their Artemis drives. Engines roared to life with a thunderous energy, harnessing gravitational forces in ways the universe had never seen before. Ships danced through space with a grace and agility that defied the laws of physics, blurring between the Zalaxian formations like phantoms. The Zalaxians hesitated, their sensors struggling to lock onto the elusive targets. This was not the clumsy, predictable adversary they had prepared for. Human ships weaved an intricate tapestry of motion, slipping through the enemy lines like a school of fish darting through a net. On the Dauntless, Lieutenant Kai Moreno worked his console with dexterous precision, his fingers a blur over the holographic interface. Targeting solutions acquired, firing ion lances, beams of concentrated ion energy lanced out from the human ships, striking with pinpoint accuracy. Zalaxian hulls, thought impenetrable, buckled under the relentless assault. Explosions blossomed in the void, an incandescent testament to human ingenuity. The Zalaxian commander watched in disbelief as his ships faltered, as his supposedly superior forces crumbled under the unexpected onslaught. He could not fathom how these humans, with their limited resources, could mount such a resistance. But humanity was not merely fighting with technology. They fought with the raw, untamed ferocity of a species that refused to kneel. Alara's voice cut through the chaos, rallying her crew. "Deploy the vortex net." In the heart of the human fleet, a web of energy unfurled, a lattice of interlocking beams that twisted and turned through space, forming a vast, shimmering trap. The Zalaxians, initially dismissive, found their crafts ensnared, their movements hampered as the vortex net disrupted their navigational systems. Communication lines crackled with panic as Zalaxian pilots struggled against the invisible bonds. The net was a testament to human ingenuity, a synthesis of quantum entanglement and gravitational manipulation that had never been seen before. It was a weapon born from the collective minds of Earth's greatest thinkers, a solution forged in the fires of desperation and hope. With their formations in disarray, the Zalaxian ships became easy targets. Human pilots, honed by years of simulations and combat training, darted in and out of the fray, delivering precise strikes that crippled their enemies. The Zalaxian fleet, once an unstoppable force, now found itself on the defensive. Alara seized the moment. All ships, focus fire on the flagship. The tide turned with a singular focus. The combined might of humanity bore down upon the Zalaxian command ship, a leviathan that anchored their fleet. It was a risk, a gamble, but humanity had always thrived when pushed to the brink. The Zalaxian commander, realization dawning, watched in horror as the human ships converged, their weapons unleashing a torrent of destruction. His flagship shook under the onslaught, systems failing as the relentless barrage continued. This was not the outcome he had foreseen. This was not how his conquest was supposed to end. In a final act of defiance, he ordered a retreat. The remnants of his once mighty fleet scattered, vanishing into the void as they fled the wrath of humanity. Cheers erupted across the human fleet, a jubilant crescendo of victory that echoed through the comm channels. They had done the impossible. They had faced the darkness and emerged triumphant. Alara stood tall on the bridge of the Dauntless, her heart swelling with pride. Humanity had shown its true colors, not just in its technological prowess, but in its unwavering spirit, its capacity to adapt, to overcome. As the surviving Zalaxian ships vanished into the void, the realization of their catastrophic misjudgment burned bright in their minds. They had thought humanity weak, but they had witnessed the strength of a species united, driven by a fierce desire to be free. In the silence that followed, the stars seemed to shine a little brighter, as if acknowledging humanity's place among them. The crew of the Dauntless embraced, laughter and tears mingling in a cathartic release of emotion. They had not just defended their home. They had proven that humanity was a force to be reckoned with, a force that could not be broken. Alara looked out into the vastness of space, her voice a whisper as she addressed the stars. We did it. We showed them. Humanity is here to stay. In that moment, it was clear. The galaxy had a new player, one that would not bow, would not break. Humanity had claimed its victory, and with it, a future filled with endless possibilities. The dust from humanity's last stand against the enigmatic overseers had barely settled when the skies began to clear. What had been an oppressive curtain of alien warships now dissolved into a tapestry of brilliant stars, the human spirit's light rekindling their shine. Earth lay scarred but unbroken, a testament not only to survival but to defiance scripted in the fire of rebellion. In the heart of New San Francisco, once a bustling metropolis, now a bastion of resistance, Commander Alara Winters stood atop the ruins of what had been the Overseer's central command hub. Her eyes scanned the horizon, where the remnants of alien technology flickered with the last vestiges of an oppressive regime. She smiled, a weary, triumphant grin that spoke of battles won and futures reclaimed. Around her, humanity buzzed with a frenetic energy, a mix of disbelief and determination. Volunteers of every age and background worked tirelessly, dismantling the alien machinery that had once imprisoned them. Tech-savvy teens reverse-engineered Overseer devices, repurposing them to restore Earth's crippled infrastructure. Engineers and mechanics from all walks of life labored to rebuild and innovate, while scientists pondered the potential of hybrid technology. Alara turned her gaze to the makeshift memorials erected for those lost in the struggle, friends, allies, and even those who had once been enemies. Her fingers brushed over a weathered photograph of her brother, Liam, the rebel leader whose sacrifice had lit the spark of uprising. His death had been the catalyst, but Alara had been the fuel, igniting a fire that had spread across the globe. As she remembered Liam, echoes of his impassioned speeches filled her mind. His words had united humanity, transcending borders and cultures, binding them with a shared purpose, to reclaim their sovereignty. The rebellion had been his dream, and now, its reality was the legacy they all carried forward. In the days following their victory, Earth had become a beacon for other oppressed worlds. Encrypted messages poured in from across the galaxy, each carrying stories of subjugation and pleas for guidance. Humanity, once isolated and insular, now stood as the vanguard of a burgeoning alliance of free worlds. Ambassador Kira Nahul, a former overseer who had defected to the human cause, worked tirelessly to bridge these newfound alliances. Her unique perspective as both an alien and a rebel provided invaluable insight. She had risked everything to aid humanity, her defection marking the first fracture in the overseer's seemingly unyielding control. Now, she helped coordinate the galaxy's first interspecies coalition, a council of worlds united not by conquest, but by collaboration and mutual respect. In the council chamber, a vast, domed structure rebuilt from the remains of an overseer dreadnought, ambassadors from liberated worlds gathered. Each bore a different form and language, yet all shared the same burning desire for freedom. Humanity, it seemed, had ignited a cosmic revolution. Dr. Marcus Chen, the brilliant scientist whose innovations had turned the tide of battle, attended these meetings with a newfound sense of belonging. His work in integrating human and overseer technologies had not only won the war but also set the stage for a technological renaissance. Earth's brightest minds now collaborated with alien counterparts, crafting inventions that extended life, explored new dimensions, and even ventured into the very fabric of time itself. As Marcus spoke about the potential of these technologies, his voice carried the excitement of a man unshackled by the past. "We stand on the precipice of a new era," he declared, "one where knowledge transcends boundaries, and where impossible is merely a word we redefine." The soldiers and civilians who had fought side by side with Alara and Marcus now found themselves heroes in a story that would be told across generations. Among them, Lieutenant Aiden Reyes, whose bravery had inspired countless acts of heroism, now led efforts to train a new generation of peacekeepers. These guardians were not enforcers of old dogmas, but protectors of peace and liberty. Aiden had always believed in the potential of humanity, and now he saw it realized in the eager faces of recruits who volunteered to safeguard their hard-won freedom. These young men and women, drawn from every corner of a recovering Earth, embodied the spirit of unity and hope. They were no longer mere soldiers. They were beacons of a new dawn, ready to venture into the stars and defend the values they'd fought so hard to claim. As humanity embraced its new role on the cosmic stage, it also faced the responsibility such power entailed. The overseers, though defeated, had left behind a legacy of division and mistrust among the stars. The challenge now was not only to rebuild but to heal, to extend the hand of friendship where once there was only the fist of oppression. Earth's leaders, guided by the wisdom of experience and the fire of rebellion, embarked on diplomatic missions to reconcile with former foes. This effort was spearheaded by President Celine Amaral, whose leadership had been crucial during the darkest days of conflict. Under her guidance, Earth extended olive branches, seeking to forge partnerships predicated on equality and understanding. In her speeches to the galaxy, President Amaral spoke not of vengeance but of redemption. "The scars of war are deep," she acknowledged, "but they are a testament to our resilience. Let us learn from them. Let us grow, and let us ensure that the future we build is one of peace." Her words resonated deeply, not only with former adversaries but with worlds that had watched from the sidelines, hesitant to act against the overseers. Now, inspired by humanity's example, these civilizations began to reevaluate their roles in the cosmic order. As the galaxy slowly shifted towards peace, Earth itself experienced an unprecedented rejuvenation. Cities rose from the ashes, not as mere replicas of their past selves but as symbols of renewal and innovation. Climate restoration projects, powered by hybrid technologies, transformed barren landscapes into verdant paradises. Humanity's ingenuity, once bound by Earth's gravity, now soared among the stars, uniting worlds with a shared dream of exploration and discovery. In the heart of this new world, Alara found solace. Her journey, from grieving sister to leader of a revolution, had forged her into a figure of hope. She stood as a bridge between the past and the future, her story a testament to the power of resilience and the unyielding spirit of humanity. On a peaceful evening, as the first human-built starship prepared to launch on a mission of peace, Alara gathered with her closest allies. Aiden, Marcus, Kira, and others stood by her side, their faces illuminated by the fading light of day and the promise of adventures yet to come. Together, they watched as the ship ascended, its engines a symphony of human and alien genius. It soared into the sky, a trail of luminescence marking its path across the heavens, a promise to the universe that humanity had not only survived but thrived. As the ship disappeared into the cosmos, Alara took a deep breath, the weight of her journey lifting. She knew that the future was uncertain, that challenges lay ahead, but she also knew that humanity would face them with the same courage and defiance that had brought them this far. For in the end, humanity's greatest victory was not in what they had destroyed, but in what they had created. A legacy of unity, a tapestry of hope, and a story of rebellion that would echo across the stars for generations to come.